Hey, what's going on, friends and family? My name is Skylent, and today I've got 5 games that I really think need to be revived. They need to be revived for a couple of reasons. One is that inherently they had some cool ideas, but mostly it's like originality in some way, somehow, or I think that they would fit really well with the current modern competition. They just maybe originally they came out too soon, or they didn't have the focus on their originality, or really what made them great, or they had some issues that kind of obfuscated words what makes them special. So hopefully if they do get revived, if they could, or if there's a spiritual successor, they kind of learn from those mistakes and really just kind of cut the bullshit and get right to the good stuff. And I do think that all of these games had some good stuff. I personally had a great time with all of these games. I played them extendedly. These are also games that I did multiple episodes on my channel or maybe some other channels. So definitely there was a little bit of history with me in some of these games, even though I think for every single one I did at least one video calling out all of its bullcrap and not goodness, but there was some goodness to these games, you know? A review can be pros and cons, imagine that. But these games did shut down for reasons, and I'll try to talk about those lightly, but for the most part, I do want to celebrate these games, and I really think they should be revived. And mostly I just want to revel in nostalgia, just a little bit. I like looking forward to new games and being hype. We'll do more videos on that, but sometimes you gotta look back and see what we missed out on. Hopefully you didn't. Hopefully you did have fun. But yeah. Anyways, let's do this top 5. Let's keep the hype alive. Okay, friends, the first game that I'm going to be mentioning is Duelist, and I'm completely jumping the gun here because Duelist is actually not shut down just yet. It's going to be shutting down, I think, this month? It's shutting down pretty soon. And Duelist was a very interesting game. It was so interesting that Hi-Rez even totally cloned it with its Hand of the Gods card game. But basically, the gimmick of Duelist was that I guess you could kind of combine Hearthstone and Final Fantasy Tactics, and there you kind of go. The board is kind of a flat, chessy size board. You do have unique generals that you actually maneuver around the board, as well as anything that you summon. But for the most part, the archetypes and the cards were very similar to Hearthstone, so nothing too outrageous like you might have seen in some other tactical card games such as Faria, which it was also beloved and I think is also going to be shut down. Well, it's discontinued, but regardless, that could also probably be on the list. Basically every tactical card game. But Duelist was the one that I think was supposed to be the spearhead of the genre, and it literally was. It was like one of the first. It came out really hard-hitting with some really good animations. I love the mixed media pixel art. Gorgeous. How could it have been saved? I think it could have had way more emphasis on the campaigns and been more innovative like Hearthstone was. Hearthstone having the arena and then doing like literal campaigns, where Duelist just kind of had puzzle modes, which it could have done more and more of that as a great introductory or as a way to kind of be like a casual game in a sense. But yeah, Duelist as a competitive game was really fun. I personally played the Abyssian deck, and if you guys actually want to jump in and play a really fun, unique tactical game, you definitely should while it's still up, but it's shutting down like immediately, so that fucking sucks. But it really should be revived. Bandai Namco should jump in, and I'm thinking almost make like a co-op or single player kind of experience, you know, focus on the campaigns and the puzzles, or at least build out the world of Duelist, because god dang, that art and the designs were so fantastic. And I think if you made like a tactics game, this would be great. My worst fear is that it's going to turn into a gacha game, because it's so ripe to be a gacha game. But Duelist was actually like really great. But its downfall really was they never promoted it after a few commercials, not even commercials, like cute little animated trailers. They didn't really have any tournaments or anything like that I was made aware of. The balancing, like they didn't really update a lot of the cards, I think, quick enough. It was also a very grindy CCG in a very competitive genre, though Shadowverse actually maintained a popularity, and I think the new League of Legends card game will do very well as well, so there's room, but Duelist it just let itself die, basically. I guess they didn't see that they were making a lot of money, it wasn't really worth it in the end for them, and it just sucks because there really was something special and artistic with this title specifically, as well as its competitor Faria too. Okay, number 4 is going to be Lawbreakers, and it's pretty low on the list, I think, because even though I love first-person shooters, especially these fast-paced, really high-skill ceiling shooters, Lawbreakers was a mess. Visually, when you played the game, it felt chaotic, cluttered. It was very hard to distinguish things. I even got, my 144Hz monitor. I was playing Overwatch at a master's level, and with Lawbreakers, even though I played games like Tribes Ascend and Quake, it still it just felt uncomfortable. Even though it actually felt bad to be doing amazing. Like I would go like 20 plus. I'd have like 20 something kills and like 1 death or something. Like I started getting really, really good at Lawbreakers. And, in a way, you would think like, oh man, you're good at it. You must be having a lot of fun with it. Inherently, the mechanics, there's some concepts there. There's some good gimmicky shit there. But it like ran like poop and it kind of looked like poop. So if they're going to remake it, basically they might need to tone down like how often you are in anti-gravity. It gets a little too bonkers, or they need to have more fun game modes and make it more of a silly game. That's actually how Smite has survived in the MOBA genre. It's both extremely casual and incredibly competitive at the same time, though mostly casual. And it really bridges that gap fantastically. It's most people's first MOBA, and I think Lawbreakers was like, it had all these weird, casual, chaotic mechanics, but it tried to like sell itself as a hardcore shooter, but then it didn't have the visual styling of competitive games, which are more clean. So they do need to make the art style clean. It was too messy. It looked like Call of Duty, but played like Quake, which is also kind of a problem with Quake Champions. But there's just too much noise going on, especially for a game that already is mechanically incredibly noisy. But oh man, those mechanics. The anti-gravity, the movement, the momentum, and the skill ceiling with that, and all the characters having such interesting abilities and weapons that totally tie into the physics of the game, just blew my mind. Immediately, I actually shed a tear whenever I saw the Dude, guys, I love grappling hooks. But the first moment of the first trailer, Lawbreakers, someone jumps off the map and then uses the grappling hook, which is actually physics-based, and then swings around the map. God damn, did I love that. Yeah, I do love Wrecking Ball in Overwatch, and basically every character that has a grappling hook, I kind of do that. So yeah, anyways, went really ham with the assassin, super fun. You can even point your gun behind you and shoot to kind of like boost you, like you have a jetpack or something. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that. Actually, I would love if Tribes Ascend made a resurgence, but Tribes Ascend is technically still playable in multiple titles, but Lawbreakers is shut down, and it really didn't need to be shut down. The main issue? Lawbreakers could still exist, because there's way noisier and awfuler, free-to-play shooters. Lawbreakers launched, it wasn't free-to-play, had some weird monetization, and basically Nexon, right? Basically Nexon. What did they do to Dirty Bomb and many other games? They Nexoned it. Okay, so Lawbreakers was Nexoned. A lot of people want to blame Cliff Bleszinski, and there is definitely some blame to that. There's definitely a lot of ignorance with that man, though I love basically all his games. Gears of War was fantastic. But Lawbreakers, dude, it had potential, and it was basically just muddied. That's the story of Lawbreakers. It's muddied with maybe just too much of everything. You just tone it down a little bit, or if you're gonna go so ham, then you need to have more casual game modes, make it easier to get into, maybe have a campaign, a story, something, I don't know, something. All these other games that have succeeded, like Overwatch or Paladins, they have mechanics to them, or an art style or a cleanness to them that make it easier to go from casual to competitive, or for competitive players to kind of, chillax. It's not just full ham, full stress all the time, visual noise, making you seasick, basically. So, yeah. Lawbreakers, come back, clean up, sober up, and let's see what we can do then. All right. Number 3, or halfway through the list here, we have Evolve. Evolve is a game that shouldn't have failed. I know a lot of people will be like, well, it's obvious it failed. But then again, actually, there's some really surprising asymmetrical multiplayer games that have done really well. We have SCP Laboratory, Secret Laboratory, that's doing pretty great. Deceit as a free-to-play game is doing good too. And mainly Dead by Daylight. Oh my god, and Friday the 13th, even though as janky as that game is, people really do like asymmetrical multiplayer games, not even talking about the prop hunt kind of style games. But dude, Evolve also was pretty popular instantaneously. I had my MacBook at the time, and I thought it ran pretty good, on my MacBook Pro, which that line of MacBooks was actually pretty beast at the time. But still, Evolve, it looked good, it ran pretty great, and it had a really cool concept. And this was at an era when everyone was really getting into that sort of monster nostalgia, right? Stranger Things was gonna come on the horizon, synthwave and stuff like that was coming back. So this sort of October monster, sort of retro inspired, monster movie inspired game was really hype. And it was at a time when we really kind of wanted a new Left 4 Dead. Now we do have the Vermintide titles, but in terms of the PvP, we didn't have something quite like Evolve ever. And since then, not too many games have come out that kind of emulate it. There's some mini games on Minecraft and stuff, which I have tons of fun with. but Evolve itself had to break. Basically, I really think it was just a complete PR nightmare. Essentially, it was really hype, and they tried to cash in, and I guess they did. The monetization was bullshit. It was debatably pay to win. No, I would call it pay to win. It was too grindy. There wasn't a campaign or anything like that, which I thought there would have been. So it's just a multiplayer game, and then they try to make it an esport. Here's the thing, guys. I honestly wanted to play this game as an esport. I wanted to be some team's monster. You know how baseball, you're the pitcher, or you're the kicker on a football team? Yeah, I wanted to be the monster, and I really think Evolve could have been competitive, but then they kind of stopped supporting it competitively, and they didn't update it enough, and yet it was really expensive, so casual players and competitive players were just cucked. And it was a really cool concept, and actually executed fairly well, though the balance... See, that's another thing. They didn't really support it. They needed to update it far more frequently with the balance changes and issues. And basically, everyone just felt, a little cucked. We pulled out a little bit too early. We didn't get to finish. And that's what Evolve is. Evolve never evolved into the final form that it needed to be to honestly be a viral success, because it had everything that it needed to be. And then when it went free to play, it had a second chance, a second life, and they failed again. That was just a Hail Mary, and that was their last throw. And you can tell they just kind of threw it. So, what a fucking tragedy. Number 2 on the list, beloved game, Gigantic. Man, oh man. I actually met some members of Motiga in the community team. I actually applied to work at Motiga. I was so enthralled with Gigantic. But also, it's actually funny, I applied to games that I specifically see that I can do something specific to make it better. And Gigantic had a really big issue with its community engagement. It was a game that had a lot of hype when it was announced, actually before Overwatch. And it was also such a unique game where it was a MOBA, but kind of in reverse, where the creeps were actually the nexuses, or there were these giant monsters, and the goal is to team deathmatch in order to open up the monsters, and then you actually fight the objective like that. So it's this really weird game where also you summon towers, but they're creatures, so you can kind of choose the different creatures, and the different characters also. Oh my god. The skill ceiling for this game was huge, where it had MOBA RPG style elements where you're leveling up, you have all these stats, a Guild Wars style stamina bar, where you're dodging and things like that, where it kind of feels like PvP in Guild Wars 2. But then at the same time, it's a shooter. Like even the melee characters, you have to properly aim them and do backstabs and things like that. So it was like peak MMO/MOBA/shooter gameplay all tied in one. So it was a very complex game, very competitive game. But honestly, as cool as a lot of the characters were, they didn't really fit the archetypes that I wanted them to. Like, I would have loved if the girl who summoned the ghost, she's kind of a DPS character. It would have been cool if she was a tank character, like a summonable, and you kind of micro around the tank knight. That would be great if she was a summon tank character. But really, and then also there's a support character who kind of heals, but also really is just a DPS. And you have, you do actually have bruiser characters who are really just very healthy DPS. Like basically everyone is really shades of DPS, which is kind of an issue in Guild Wars 2 that has somewhat been rectified. But really, when you play team-based games, you do want different roles. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, there was roles. And technically, if you look at the fine print, but at a macro level, when you jump into the game, is there supports like Thresh? Thresh is like, oh my god, that's a support. Even though I know you can go, ADC Thresh, and I totally do that all the time. But Gigantic just didn't have individual roles. The map design, also, there wasn't that many maps. As cool and big as they were, a lot of the times you were just running around the map. The game modes also were a little bit confusing. Not as shit as Battleborn, which I didn't even put on this list. Battleborn was super confusing and awkward as a MOBA, but Gigantic was almost there. But the problem is that they squandered their development time and all their money that was given by Microsoft to kind of they built a foundation of gorgeous graphics, animations, and core gameplay, but then they couldn't get the right game mode. They couldn't really balance the game. They were missing some fundamentals of, I guess, MOBA design and balance. Then they never supported the game afterwards. It even went free to play. Perfect World didn't really do any tournaments, and yeah, they just didn't have that community engagement until the very end, and then by then it was actually really too late. So Gigantic should have launched as free to play, and look how good, Paladins is doing very well. Hi-Rez is doing okay with Paladins. Could be better, but Gigantic could have surpassed Paladins by far. It debatably could be right there with Overwatch, in my opinion. I honestly think Gigantic could have been a game that I mained just like I did Overwatch. Even with all its problems, which a big problem Since I do play Overwatch at 144 Hz at a master's level, Gigantic was locked at 60 FPS, had a number of performance issues, lag, latency, and for such a skill ceiling high game like this that played so fast and really is a competitive game, there was just no room for bullshittery like that. And let's not even talk about the Windows Store and the Xbox cross-platform. Oh my god, and then the Perfect World Launcher. It was all bad. If this was free to play, launched on Steam, this game would honestly be one of the most popular games out there. It really should be relaunched. Push it as a community game, community tournaments. It'd be fucking fantastic. And number one, and I do want to say I've been cursing a lot lately. That's just because I'm very emotional right now. And I'm also kind of ranting this out, not edited at all. But yeah, number one is Wildstar. Wildstar is on here less for personal reasons and more because I know you guys want it. But that's also kind of also leading back to personal reasons because I never really got into Wildstar because it wasn't that popular. And popularity completely matters when it comes to some of these games. Like I had to stop playing Lawbreakers because nobody played it. Stop playing Evolve, Gigantic, Duelist even. I stopped playing a lot of these games before they shut down, even though I loved them for certain reasons. But, if there's no players, it's not a competitive game. There's no hope for the game, there's no dream, there's not going to be updates, and eventually the content gets dry. But Wildstar, I didn't even really go that deep into it because I knew it was going to die. And because it's an MMO. But that's really its fault. Wildstar was a gorgeous game, and I think it had so much charm, and I thought its graphics in terms of like the mechanics and what they actually Guild Wars 2 emulated Wildstar to an extent, and a lot of modern MMOs are as well, with the way they do their danger circles and how they show very clearly and cleanly where the attacks are going to come off from. I think that's just awesome. The UI was okay. Basically, Wildstar looked like a really cool game and it could have been competitive, but they spread too thin. They try to make an MMO and they basically try to make WoW 2.0, but they couldn't compete with modern WoW whatsoever. But they were trying to make a modern WoW 2.0, and really, Final Fantasy XIV just did that far superior. Because Final Fantasy XIV focuses on the dungeons, and that's what Wildstar should have done. I mean, the housing system is really cool. I guess, really, if you remake Wildstar, keep the housing system. That's really cool. Maybe have some cute little fun mini games, because I think Wildstar could be totally like a Toontown style game. But taking yourself seriously in the open world with the questing and things like that, Wildstar was nowhere near the open world questing of a lot of other games. It didn't really, I don't know, it just wasn't up to snuff. I mean, it was just as good as World of Warcraft, but it just wasn't as unique as Elder Scrolls Online or Guild Wars 2 by far. And, if you're gonna have like a linear story, I guess do it like Final Fantasy. Make a Final Fantasy game. Wildstar, gut it. Basically don't be an MMO. And also the battlegrounds and everything. Man, that's a lot of time and development basically completely wasted. What a fucking tragedy. Man, I'm saying that a lot. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. But basically, Wildstar should have been a dungeon diver. Because that's the one thing everyone talks about is, oh man, those dungeons, they were hard, the raids were difficult and challenging. They basically should have made something like, if you guys played Dragon Nest or Vindictus, or maybe like Warframe, or not really Path of Exile, but games where you jump in, it's an instance, there's a dungeon, there's a boss, something like that, you run it. Really like, how you just queue up looking for group in Final Fantasy XIV for the end game, World of Warcraft, Terra as well. Those games, they're basic, they're you almost don't even play them like MMOs. That's what Wildstar should have completely focused on. And when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft, even though you might hate that they moved in that direction, it's still a really, really fun and unique gameplay style. And Wildstar was fast, it was hype, it was colorful, it had really unique classes as well. But a lot of the game, even though it wasn't bad, it was really just fluff. It was noise, it was annoying, and they made it hard to get to the good shit, which a lot of these games did, honestly. So Wildstar, remake it, basically have like, Toontown style mini games and seasonal events if you want to, have the housing, make it cute and fun, have guild stuff like that, have a hub town or whatever, but just gut the rest of the game and focus on just running dungeons. Basically, make like a Western Dragon Nest. That's what I would really like. Or a Kurtzspell or whatever. There's a couple of games that just gut the open world content and a lot of the bullshittery, though Kurtzspell does PvP and I don't know if it really should. But yeah, just focus. Just focus, be a weird, Looney Tunes Monster Hunter. I don't know what you could do, but Wildstar, you got the assets, you got the art, you got the mechanics, and there was really good gems of gameplay in there that I could tell that I actually played, and I enjoyed it for what I did, but I also know I was missing out a lot. And those who actually did get to the end game, and I watched those videos, it looks stellar. It looks so fun. I want to play it, so please come back, build it up, and I think a lot of people would actually really enjoy it in that sense. And when it is designed as a more kept or like 5-player style game, you don't need it to be popular in order to have fun. I mean, look at Dungeon Defenders. I have so much fun with that. Or actually a number of games like Blade and Soul and Terra, which aren't that popular anymore. You can still jump in and run and do whatever, you know. Blade and Soul is good for the PvP, but also Terra is good for the end game. So Wildstar, you just, come on, come back to us. But all right, guys, I just ranted. You know, I really wanted to give out what was on my heart. You probably fucking heard that. You know what I'm saying? So I really had a time with these games. I hope you feel that, hear that, and hopefully you appreciate that. And if you do, maybe peel some eyeballs on the Patreon. This channel is mostly Patreon run, or I want it to be. That'd be really great. So I could talk about what I'm really passionate about and play these games, and especially have money to buy games so I can play them before I miss out, or, you know, I can share my experience with those games so that you guys don't miss out. That'd be really cool too, because when we play these online games, we have to admit all online games, they have a prime time and they just have, I guess, a lifetime. They eventually will end. So hopefully we can all enjoy that and appreciate it together. And, you know, even if you didn't get to play these games, hopefully you, I don't know, got a little bit of that vibage from this video, and hopefully you guys had fun. That's all I can ask. Anyways, guys, keep the hype alive. My name's Skylent, and I'll see you again next time.